And I'd like to start this meeting of the Somerville Public Schools for Monday, August 31st, with a moment of silence and then a salute to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Superintendent Skipper, will you call the roll, please?
Certainly. Dr. Phillips?
Here.
Ms. Pepsin?
Here.
President McLaughlin? Mr. Green?
Here.
Mayor Curtatone? Ms. Barish?
Here.
Ms. Patone?
Here.
Dr. Ackman?
Here.
And Ms. Norman?
Here.
We have a quorum.
Fantastic. I'd like to start this meeting, though, with a warm welcome and moment of gratitude for all of our staff that returned today. It is unlike any other year. As I said this morning to the all staff meeting, one of my kids last night said, "Mom, you remember when the winter of snow and we went to June 31st and we all lost our minds?" Well, we didn't know. And he's right. We're in a different world. And I, as a parent and on behalf of all of the school committee, a deep gratitude for all of our staff, our secretaries, our paras, our teachers, our coaches, our deans of students, our administrators, all of our special ed staff, our ELL staff. You were such important adults in our kids' lives, and all of the relationships that you established before we went out, and the ones that you will foster and grow in this new world of COVID, they matter so much. Our kids need you more than ever, and we need each other more than ever. So I again, on behalf of the entire school committee, welcome to our new members and all of our returning champions. We are thrilled to have our staff back. So just want to make sure that that gets acknowledged, because it's important. So the next item of business, Superintendent Skipper, I know we have guests coming. We only have 3 public speakers, and I would like to do it in order, if that's okay with you.
Certainly. I want to acknowledge that the mayor is here, but he's having technical voice control issues. So Catherine is going to attempt to unmute him, but he is, let the record show he is here.
Thank you so much for that acknowledgement. And I think President of Council McLaughlin might have another meeting tonight. I can't really keep it all straight. So with that, is there a motion to approve the minutes of May 11th and May 18th?
So moved.
Second.
There is a motion by Mr. Green, seconded by Dr. Ackman. Is there any discussion on the minutes? We need a roll call vote, and I'm going to slow it down because I did not read my official blurb. So before we do the roll call vote, pursuant of Governor Baker's March 12th, 2020 order suspending, certain provisions of the open meeting law, GLC 30A S18, and the Governor's March 15th, 2020 order imposing strict limitations on the number of people that may gather in one place, as well as Mayor Curtatone's declaration of emergency dated March 15th, 2020. This meeting of the Somerville School Committee will be conducted via remote participation. We will post an audio recording, an audio video recording, transcript, or other comprehensive recording of these proceedings as soon as possible after the meeting on the City of Somerville website and local access government channels. Okay, so now we're official. Superintendent, can you call the roll on the approval of the minutes, please?
Certainly. Dr. Phillips?
Yes.
Ms. Pepsin?
Yes.
President McLaughlin? Mr. Green?
Yes.
Mayor Curtatone?
Yes.
Ms. Barish?
Yes.
Ms. Patone?
Yeah.
Dr. Ackman?
Yes.
Ms. Norman?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you so much. We are now on to item number 3, public comment, which also comes with a little script. So I'm going to be on top of it tonight. So welcome and thank you all all of you who have signed up for public comment. Speakers will be allowed, I'm going to allow 3 minutes because there's only 3 of you tonight to present their material. However, the chair may limit the comments to 2 minutes based on the number of individuals signed up to speak. Remarks should be respectful, professional, and addressed through the chair. If a speaker persists in improper remarks, the chair may terminate that individual's right to continue. Public comment is not a discussion, debate, or dialogue between residents and the committee. Members of the committee will not reply to public comment in the course of the meeting, though individual members may follow up and items in the public comment may be taken up in future meetings. The school committee will not hear personal complaints of school personnel nor against any member of the school community in public session. Individuals may address topics on the agenda or items within the school committee's scope of responsibility, such as the district budget, goals and policies, or the role of the superintendent. And the public is encouraged to submit comments in writing for inclusion on the public record. And with that, we're going to start off. There's 3 of you, so the order that it will take them is Elizabeth Shaw, then Sarah Campbell, then Michelle Lippens. Elizabeth Shaw, the floor is yours.
Hi, it's Elizabeth Caffrey, just maiden married name difference. And I reside at 71 Alpine Street. I'm here not to ask for dates for each phase of the reopening plan, but to ask for transparency in the plan and the decision process. I'd like the school committee, the residents elected representatives, to push the mayor, superintendent, whoever it should be, for clear metrics and a framework for reopening at each phase. At T-3 weeks, I don't understand how there is not a decision tree, points of consideration, and or why it cannot be shared. As an SPS parent and community member, I feel like there needs to be accountability, but I need to understand who to hold accountable and to what metric. The state has provided this for businesses and had guidance such as phase 2 cannot start sooner than 3 weeks after phase 2A. Here are the considerations, here's the process, and I don't understand why something like that, again, cannot be shared with residents this close to the start of the school year. Again, I'm not asking for exact dates because I realize things are changing, but this lack of transparency and details is creating a powder keg in the community. Without guidance and frankly, a growing distrust in the process, we're seeing parents against parents, parents against educators, just stemming from this frustration about the entire process. And it's not pretty, it's not good for the city, and I think it's only going to grow worse and stronger, again, without the details. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. The next up is Sarah Campbell. And Sarah, the floor is yours.
Hello, my name is, can you hear me?
Yes.
My name is Sarah Campbell. I live at 18 Charles Street and I'm the parent of a Brown student. My comments are focused on the after-school program, which is operating on a hybrid model despite the school system operating on a fully remote model. While we're looking towards resuming safely in-school instruction, the decisions about when or under what criteria where we would be able to switch to hybrid are yet to be made or yet to be shared with parents. And despite this, after school is set up primarily as a hybrid system. It's unclear when students start after school with the hybrid model, if they will be aligned with the days when they're attending school or the days where they're not attending school. Is it actually better for kids to have more social interaction throughout the week, or do we put all of their social interaction onto 2 days? Additionally, there is no after-school coverage for Wednesday whatsoever, despite the fact that Wednesday will never be a day where children have instruction in the hybrid model or in the remote model. After school is ending earlier than in previous years at 4:30 instead of 5:30, and I simply don't understand why during this difficult time where we're putting parents under so much stress, we're giving them less support. I am asking for every possible hour and every possible day to help my family through this time. And while I assume that space is a limitation for the after school program, there's no usage of the space in the morning. where I assume you've planned that all students will receive synchronous instruction simultaneously. But if space is a limitation, we could have particular grades use the space in the morning while later grades are getting instruction in the afternoon. We could be using this space better. I just reiterate, as a parent, we need to be able to use these resources in a creative and flexible way to provide more support for families, because we're getting the short end of the stick here, and it's really difficult. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comments. Michelle Lippens? Michelle, are you there?
Michelle, you're all set. You're self-muted.
Oh, okay. Okay, sorry. I'm sorry. I had
There
to
you
figure
go.
that one. Okay, you can hear me. Okay. Michelle
Yes.
Lippman, 24 Thorpe Street. I officially have 3 children in the some rural public schools, and I'm the co-director for the CPAC. As you know, the CPAC is an unpaid parent volunteer group with an active membership. The primary role of the CPAC is to advise the district on the needs, challenges, and successes of our families of students with special needs that they're experiencing. Since school is shut down, we have held several virtual events over Zoom, graciously facilitated by the director of the Special Education Department, Christine Trevisone. Starting in September, we'll be hosting monthly meetings, if not more, and given all the uncertainty we have been living with, we anticipate that meetings hosted by the CPAC will continue to be remote for the foreseeable future. On behalf of the CPAC leadership, we ask that the district provide us with our own Zoom account. We are thankful and recognize the concerted collaborative effort and support to provide us access to the district Zoom account thus far. Our calls typically last from 90 to 120 minutes, well over the limit of the free Zoom account. We had over 60 participants in our first Zoom call, presented in collaboration with the Massachusetts Advocates for Children on School in the COVID era. Over 50 participants at our joint office hour with school committee members Carrie Norman and Laura Patone, and over 100 participants at our special needs town hall meeting, and around 65 participants at our most recent workshop, Fall Reopening for Students with Disabilities during the COVID era. Our last 2 meetings had interpretation in 3 languages, Spanish, Portuguese, and Haitian Creole, with several members taking advantage of this key feature. Our mission is to increase access and equity aligns with the district's initiative, and this commitment depends on reliable technology and the support of SPS. Without a Zoom account, we must rely on Christine Trevisone's valuable time and availability. Our goal is to increase diversity in our membership so that all parents in Somerville, including our multilingual families, can access our events and benefit from a strong and supportive network of families of children with special needs. Finally, we not only ask you to provide the CPAC with their own Zoom account, but also our partner organization, the LPAC. Thank you for considering our request for a Zoom account for both the CPAC and the LPAC. And thank you for being here tonight. Bye.
Thank you for those comments. Thank you for all the public comment speakers. I would encourage you later tonight, in the not too distant future, we will be having people to speak about the after school and out of school programming. And I know typically we open it up because the mayor has so much information with an update from the mayor, and he has since joined us. Mayor, are you able to speak? Did you work it out, and would you like to say a few words?
Well, yeah, I'm sorry. I still I can't get my video activated, so I have no idea if it's working. I apologize, but I was able to. I'll deal with that issue. But anyway, I do want to, in general, provide an update.
Thank
And
you.
I know also recognize the comments from our first speaker, and that of concern of parents of wanted to see a plan, wanted to know indicators, and those are the things we are working on collectively and collaboratively now, as you, Madam Chairperson, the members of the school committee, and the superintendent knows. I do want to clarify, the Commonwealth or DESE have a plan. The governor's office and DESE have put out a very elementary colored coded map relying on one data point That's the number of cases per 100,000 population. And that determines whether you're red community, yellow community, green community, if you've read the information of those maps or guidance, as they like to call it, that will guide you whether you should be fully in school, hybrid, or remote. All experts would agree we should not rely on one data point. And we're looking at, and we made it clear in all our meetings, there's several indicators to look at beyond the number of positive cases or the positivity rate. And we're doing so in a way to be diligent, to be deliberate, to ensure the health and safety and well-being of our school population, teachers, staff, students, their families, and the general public, and that any reopening, and when this is the approach we've taken in all phases, mind you, that any reopening of our lives or economy, our schools is sustainable. So with that being said, there are questions we understand about school buildings and the plan and testing. And these are things we are working on currently in order to put together a closely coordinated, integrated plan around building the operations of the facilities, the physical plant, making sure that air exchange and filtration levels are at a proper standard to minimize risk of transmission, integrated with a testing surveillance plan to support an overall education plan. I would submit there are very few, and maybe I can count them on one hand, if that, any other school districts doing what Somerville's doing as a school district, as a city, as a community to ensure the health and safety well-being of every stakeholder, every resident, everyone in our schools as we move forward. Within the next 3 weeks, I expect to work with the school department, Madam Chairwoman, to release that information as we finalize it, and the information, the plan for each building that speaks to the need, the analysis, the assessment of the buildings in terms of the condition and the interventions or investments or adjustments needed to bring down or minimize or abate any risk down to the lowest possible level of transmitting the virus from person to person. Along that, we expect to release for the public what our surveillance testing plan will be, who will be tested, the frequency of it, what the sampling size will be, and so forth. In addition, we expect to be able to release for the public, what other health, not just guidelines, mandates and protocols will have to be followed by anyone who will be in physical attendance of our public schools at any time. I understand, and I'm acutely aware of the need to have that information as soon as possible, but we're doing work that really no other community is doing. And we want to get it right because there's too much at stake. So that when we do have the opportunity, when all other conditions allow us to be physically present in our schools in any capacity, whether it's hybrid or full, we have the tools to operate in the new normal. So I'd submit we're being very transparent. And as soon as we have the information, we'll make that available. And we've been brutally honest from the very beginning. We don't have all the answers to those questions. Those are the questions we're working to answer. And really, again, this has been dumped on 351 cities and towns. Neither the governor, nor the Department of Early and Secondary Education had a plan. They put it on all of us to figure it out. And we're taking the lead. We're going to do the work, and we're going to unveil it to the public, and we'll make it very clear what our methodology, what our analysis, what our reasoning was to make the recommendations we're going to make, so that, again, when we can get back to school physically, we can do so in a way that ensures the health and safety and well-being of everyone, and that our reopening is sustainable. So I'm happy to take any questions on that, Madam Chairwoman.
If there are questions, I Ms. Patone, but I want to add one of the reasons why we are being so detail oriented in Somerville. It's not just looking at ventilations of a whole building, but really looking at different locations within the building is as safe as we can be here, because we are in an area that a number of our adjoining districts are in the red for whatever that very simplistic color coding system is. So the caution is, if we were all in the green, that would be one thing, but that is not we're in a very dense metropolis right now. Ms. Patone, you had a question?
Thank you, Chairperson Norma, and this is through you to probably the mayor. We all know this is an extreme situation, and I've personally been very impressed with the efforts of the city and the district to try to address the risks and meet the needs of our community. And I completely understand the issues of the building, testing, and understanding the progression of the virus and how we're going to assess that. I have had constituents ask questions about the plan for phase 3 to open up on September 8th. And they're concerned that with phase 3, we're increasing risk and exposure in our community before we open the schools for in-person ed. And I wanted to give you the opportunity to talk to this because I know it's a lot more complicated than, oh, this date and that date, and that the buildings themselves are going to take time. The testing program will take more time, as well as understanding what the indicators are. But I thought I'd just give you an opportunity to speak to that because that came from some constituents. Thank you.
Well, I'm happy to clarify because that's not what we released through you to the good school committee woman. We said a week ago, and actually it was misrepresented in the news. In fact, today we met with stakeholders of some businesses in phase 3, and we're going to rely on the data, whether it's to open, to roll back, or to close, and we're going to be ethical in how we present the data and speak to our decision making. So phase 3, we are not fully into phase 3, and some of them we will not be on the 8th. What we represented publicly, there are some operations in that sector of the economy, i.e. Theaters, museums, entertainment venues like Legoland, they will not open. What we stated publicly is if the data continues on the correct trend, all indicators, not green, red, blue, the number of positive cases, but the rate of change of the positivity rate itself, what's happening in communities around us, testing, so forth, we are planning for a very limited reopening or expansion should be of those activities we talked about, which would be fitness centers, yoga studios, and so forth. And I say this because all our decisions are being guided by data analysis and the highest level of expertise from health experts, epidemiologists, and the like. They're not political decisions. And these are fair questions. So we are not going to do anything, even to expand the activity in certain sectors of our economy that's going to risk public health. But our decisions, we're making recommendations, we're confident. We're speaking with experts on that. And again, we're not looking at one data point. And again, let me clarify, we've never mentioned that we're going to reactivate fully or activate phase 3 fully. That's not going to be the case. It's at most a limited, very limited, with even more stringent guidelines, which we've done in phases 1 and 2, the initial parts of phase 3, more so than any community in the Commonwealth. The same would apply for this limited expansion as well.
Are there any other questions
you.
for the mayor? Thank you for those updates. Superintendent, we'll now go to item 4, report of the superintendent. And I would, how about you know who's here and what order people are going to be speaking, Mary, so I will let you just take it away for the superintendent's report.
Sure. We also want to let the record show that President McLaughlin is entered.
Thank you so much for that update.
You're welcome. So I think we'll start with Dr. Curley and Ms. Parabello because there was a few comments about community schools and the rec programming. So I think we can start with them, and I know Dr. Curley would like to give a bit of an update as to what we're working on with programming for rec and the timeline.
Thank you, Superintendent, through you, Madam Chair. As we've been trying to push out through our weekly updates, we've lined up programming through community schools, expanded programming for pre-K and K students in that 12:30 to 2:30 time frame. I know for some parents, there's been questions online about why that targeted age group. And the reason is, at least until last Thursday, we were told by the State Department of Education that we couldn't offer enrichment programming during the school hours. So I know that's been a point of confusion. That may have changed on Friday, and I can talk more about that. We're investigating, But again, to the mayor's point, this has been a kind of evolving set of guidance from the state. But that is the reason we targeted pre-K and K students for that earlier time block. And then Parks and Recreation has offered to support grades 1 through 8 with options around the fields and the parks in the city. And again, those were designed, to the earlier comment, with the plan that students will be coming back in person. So the attempt to help parents line up scheduling was to build the programming around the 2 days that the students would not be coming back into school in a hybrid environment. So if the student were to be coming back on a Monday, Tuesday, when we come back in hybrid, we would offer opportunities for Rec or Community Schools program on a Thursday, Friday. I recognize that that's complicated and it's hard. We're trying to do our best to make the transition from full remote into hybrid as seamless and planned as possible. Again, I understand as a parent myself of young kids, it's a very hard time to line up that care, but we didn't want to switch around parent schedules again. To the thing I mentioned earlier on Friday, this past Friday, we got word the governor signed an executive order allowing the Department of Early Education and Care to authorize after school and out of school time programs to now operate during the school day. So we're going back to our city partners and Jose Mendez in the Office of Summer Promise to see what that might mean and how we might be able to, in a phase 2 or in a further expansion, bring partners in like the YMCA and Arts and Crafts to help parents with school day remote learning support. Again, that came out only 3 days ago. It was quite a surprise, and we're trying to figure out how to work that into our current plans. I also want to say, to the earlier comment that was made, we're looking to work with REC and with other community providers to offer Wednesday programming. We want to give parents as many options and as much support as possible. So please be on the lookout for additional updates in that regard. We'll try to get those options out as soon as we can line them up.
I'd like to just reiterate or highlight that just what Dr. Crowley said. I will speak for myself, and I think many of my colleagues, both in Somerville and school committees and superintendents across the Commonwealth, is there has not been clear guidance. It has often been vague. It has often come as a surprise, and it has also come very late in the process. The color-coded map came the day after school committees were originally supposed to vote on their plans. Then there was the surprise announcement that the DESE's encouraging teachers to teach from classrooms, whether there are students there or they're fully remote, and no one saw that coming. And then on Friday, even with all the planning we've been doing, there's been another more changing up from the state, and it makes planning an already difficult situation incredibly hard when you don't know what the plan is and the state keeps changing it. So I appreciate our local staff for being as flexible as possible and soldiering on in a very, what's already an uncertain time due to the virus, but made further complicated from the State House.
Hi, and I just wanted to address the question made earlier about the hours. We are based outdoors, so we're not able to be inside the building. So that limits the amount of hours we can have with students outside. So potentially with the pre-K program and the regular after school, students and staff will be outside for about 5 hours with limited use of the indoors. And then given the weather changing and daylight, we'll be losing that as well. So we're trying our best to, accommodate families and have run a program that is manageable on all ends.
Does anyone have any questions for either Dr. Curley or Ms. Parabella? Dr. Phillips?
Not a question, but just a comment through you, Chair. I just want to appreciate the hard work that Dr. Curley and Ms. Parabello are doing. This is an enormous lift to change the entire way we educate children on a dime, and you are doing everything you can to keep families safe and sane at this particular moment, and I just want to appreciate you for all the hard work you're doing. I also want to appreciate our out-of-school time providers. I was really impressed to see the Y step up earlier last week or the week before to offer full day care for school-age children. I think that's great, and I'm really happy to hear the coordination that's going on with Jose Mendez and the out-of-school time providers. So thank you very much for everything you're doing.
Thank you for that. Any other questions or comments? Thank you. Mr. Green.
Thank you. Through you to, I think, Dr. Curley. First, I want to echo Dr. Phillips' comments and also Tara's comments. This is an incredibly difficult thing made harder by a state government that is giving oftentimes contradictory guidance at the last minute, right? But I just want a little more detail about our thinking now. And I realize that, again, the guidance came out late Friday, which has been the state's habit of putting out game-changing guidances at the end of the day on Friday. But given the new guidance saying about basically school age, school time, ECC coverage, or EC coverage, excuse me, we are now thinking about ways in which we can take advantage of that to provide some level of coverage during the school day. Did I hear you correctly on that?
Through you, Madam Chair. So our prior thinking, as recently as Thursday, was to take the model of community providers that's been run pretty successfully with summer camp. Think about the great, Arts and Crafts, Summer Media Center, all the great options that we have around the city, and layer them in as a remote option in the after school for students. That was based on, again, the guidance that we couldn't encroach on the school day. And so now we have to revisit, and there is a licensing component to this. There's a city authorization component that we have to understand. But I think we can both help parents and help those providers and their great programming, do it in a way that aligns with scheduling and we would love to do that. It's been a day, and I have to figure out how something we're exploring quite actively.
Yeah. Hi, Sam. Thank you for that. Superintendent Skipper, would you like to jump in?
Sure. So through Madam Chair. So I think because like us, many communities are trying to figure out how to be able to offer whatever support we can in the hybrid model and or the remote model, whichever you're at, by using community organizations. I think what has sort of happened is that there's been more and more and more building within the state of these questions about how to be able to bring in outside providers as a place maintaining safety that students would be able to do some of their remote work. We had asked the question specifically about the rec and the types of activities that the kids would be doing in the rec. And while for pre-K and K, we can certainly make a lot of loose translation because most of the standards are around social, emotional, and play and imagination and social relationship building. We can make a pretty good connection with taking some of the rec time toward that pre-K to K. They're also not mandated grades. When it came to other grades, such as first, second, third, fourth, our hope had initially been to be able to also use some of our spaces to be able to offer and to do activities for those grades, and then be able to move some of the asynchronous time to later. That seems a bit more difficult to do unless we can get, based on the new guidelines from the state, rec community schools sort of certified in that model. So I think that the state's offering to do that came as a direct response from the field of the need for this to happen everywhere. It just came really late. And so now we're sort of trying to analyze that and figure out what's the best way to be able to do that so that we can offer as much programming as possible safely. So that's, we are really literally trying to incorporate, as every opportunity comes, every funding opportunity comes, every resource opportunity of space comes, we're constantly trying to figure out how to be able to give some more support to the families, recognizing that particularly with the youngest of our students, the childcare issue is significant. So just to reassure, we really are trying our hardest on this and to be as creative as we can in that process. And we will keep doing that. So we can hopefully look at this opportunity, say, is this something we can take advantage with relative to community schools, relative to rec, similarly, for all students to be able to access. So, looking at the other kinds of partnerships and services we can bring in relative to special education for our programs to ensure that all kids can access what we offer. So there's a lot of moving parts to this, but we're doing our best with the current information we have to make really good decisions for the community.
Ms. Patone and then Mr. Green.
Mr. Green, you had your hand up first. You want to go ahead first?
I just wanted to close the loop by thanking the district and highlighting again just how even when the state is giving us new tools, they're giving it to us in the worst possible way, the worst possible time. And so I appreciate that we have new flexibility, and I appreciate our district's work trying to use that flexibility. I recognize that it is adding one more thing to our plate as we try to open school in 19 days.
Thank you for that comment. Ms. Patone?
This would be through you, Chair Norman, to the superintendent. 100% acknowledging the amount of time and energy that has gone in to really build all this stuff from scratch. This is not just continuing business as usual. Everything has to be recreated and refactored, including space. It's a Herculean effort. However, I had the question, I wanted to make sure from the perspective of a school committee member, whether or not the district, and I know we don't deal with city resources, but whether or not there's really enough resources to do the this difficult administration and support work. I know we're going to be probably hiring more staff, but I want to make sure that we're not taking these fantastic administrators and asking them to do 4 extra jobs. And if there's any need for additional resources, I hope that that comes through to the school committee to make sure that we can create this programming and support it properly.
Superintendent?
Through Madam Chair. So first, thank you for the reinforcement of that. I think, right now, this isn't as much a resource bandwidth issue as it is just, much more sort of a space capacity, safety capacity, type of challenge. This is all weather dependent currently as it is. And the goal is always sustainability. So sometimes if you start something really big, you can serve a lot of kids, but if it doesn't go well, then you're back to square one. So I think our goal really is to start this in a fashion that we can analyze it, we can be supportive to the families, we can analyze it, and then we can make some determinations about how to grow it if that is possible. I also think that we're trying to be creative relative to both during the school day as well as in the after school space. And so to Dr. Curley's point about bringing in Summer Promise and to think about what are some of the other kinds of programs we might be able to bring in, even if they're not physical in-person programs, but they're remote and they're connected to the students and they have them engaged in working, those are valued partnerships as well. So all of these things sort of come to bear as we're sort of making our plan with this. But right now I think we're moving as fast as we can, and I think more resource would only actually cause us to move faster and probably sloppier. I think the people that know the work are doing the work right now. Rosanna and her team have been amazing at adapting. Somebody should do a case study on adaptive leadership, because that's what it is for her. But really adapting and taking what was a very rigid old community schools model and having made it much more flexible and responsive to the needs of families. And I think similarly, REC, can't say enough, but Director Latham and her staff, Mr. Scapelli and so forth, I think they're doing the same thing. They're really trying to think out of the box on this. So I think the biggest thing is we need to get it up, operationalized, and then take some stock after a few weeks to see what might need to change, where we may be able to build additional capacity. Dr. Curley's point about the Wednesdays, while there will be synchronous instruction in the morning portions of Wednesdays, we're definitely looking from that 11:30 block on as a time for us to be able to build, other kinds of programming. And the question is, should that be structured programming like we're building now, or would this be better, more drop center programming where there's opportunities and students can go to different places around the city in order to access it? I think that's one of the things we're looking at right now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And a huge thank you to Dr. Curley and Ms. Paravello. I mean, this is really inventing something out of, I don't want to say nothing, because there's been these strong foundations, but it is rethinking the whole thing. At the same time that we are launching a school year and had a summer session and got through last spring. So with that, Superintendent, what's next on your report?
Certainly. So thank you both, Dr. Curley and Ms. Barbell. So I think next I would like to have Ms. Bertaldo just come on and talk a little bit about our enrollment. I want to say this, that enrollment is constantly changing at this point on a lot of levels. We see families trying to make decisions of what's best for them, which they need to. And so that ranges from moves completely out of the city, out of the state, out of the country, to temporary moves for the year, with saying that their intent is to return, to some other kinds of educational entities, but it's a lot of moves, that we're sort of seeing. So Regina and her staff at the PIC have been awesome at helping to support the schools as they're processing these. Similarly, we're also seeing an intake of new students who are moving from somewhere else to us. So there's sort of like a lot of moving parts. So the report that we would give you tonight, the numbers we'll talk about next week, will look different for sure. But we thought it would be good to at least give you a sense of what we're seeing, sort of broad strokes. So Regina?
Good evening, everybody, through you, Madam Chair. So we are experiencing all this mobility and families moving to Somerville. Of course, we don't have the newcomers this year, as we've had the influx in the past couple of years. And I have to apologize. My internet was working okay until 2 minutes ago. So pardon if I freeze. So what we see, we've seen a lot of registrations that in pre-K, right? So pre-K, it's one of the grades that it's being, we've had a higher attrition than in the past years. Right now, I pulled some data yesterday. Today, the data is totally changed. And then I received some more emails of families not attending. So it's like it changed by the time of the day. So it's going to give us a good, 2 weeks to get a good sense of what the numbers really are because of all this mobility. We look pretty healthy in kindergarten, but we have a lot of moves in grade 3 and 4, and that's consistent this year. And then with the 1 year emergency withdrawal, we have families. I think we have about, I would say about 20 families that have requested that they have other arrangements this year and would like to come back next year. It's more so kindergartners. That is a mix of other grades, but most, I would say 85–90% is kindergarten coming back to grade 1 next year. We haven't seen as many withdrawals from the high school. I'm just talking, from my own experience. From this time, it's less high schoolers leaving as of now. We don't know if the numbers will change, but right now it's pretty low transfers out of the high school. And a smaller number of incoming high schoolers as well compared to previous years. Any question? These are more, what I can say about enrollment, but I'll be glad to take any question.
Well, first, a huge thank you, because this is a chaotic time of the year, even when everything else is held steady for you. And there's been nothing steady about this. I think it's important for the school committee to understand, and I think the public to understand as we're planning, that the student population is also in flux. And so it's having plan A, B, C, and possibly D, because you don't know yet. And would it be fair to say that in a typical year, September, there's fluctuation, but usually by October it settles down? Is that, not that this is a typical year, we're expecting that. I guess my question, and then I will open it up to all my colleagues, is there anything that has stands out that was not what you expected, or any trends that you're seeing?
I think the number, even though we look healthy on the kindergarten numbers, the number of the attrition in kindergarten right now, it's much higher than in previous years. And in pre-K, it's being high, but it's much higher this year, a lot higher this year, between registrations in January and families calling with other arrangements or moving. It's a lot of move out of state, out of the country, moving around to the surrounding areas. I would say where people are moving to, it's different this year, certainly. We've had families stuck in other countries emailing us that they're not able to come back. So they are withdrawing. They went and either because of travel ban or because of, so they are remaining, where they are at. And this week, I think we expect more withdrawals this week, because that's where some school systems are starting in school. So I had a lot of emails today from parents not attending that I haven't been able to go through yet. All of them. It was a really busy day, but as expected.
Well, all the more gratitude for you being with us tonight, Superintendent, and then Dr. Ackman.
Yeah, I think to your question about the data trends, I mean, I think Regina and I were talking earlier about waiting a couple more days till it really settles and then starting to sort of run what some of that looks like. But we were sort of in the system looking at it. I think to Regina's point, there's definitely a lot more out of country this year, and that may be not being able to get back in or returning home. There's definitely a lot more out of state than we've seen in the past. And so, that may be, I mean, I've been reading a lot on sort of the mobility issues, and a lot of people are returning to family given the COVID situation. So that's meaning sometimes moving out of state. There is some relocating in certain pockets of Massachusetts, relative to the South Coast, and then like the Malden, Everett, Chelsea area for sure. I think what is I think what is a bit bothersome to me, and we need to look at this more, is there is some disparate impact on particular schools. So the Argenziano has lost it's the largest number of students. And again, we'll have to unpack that to sort of look at the profile of the students that are leaving. But even like Healy and Winter Hill, it's a lot of our immigrant and students of color, and not with necessarily an intent to return. That's the other thing. So I kind of worry about those communities and those schools and what sort of that means kind of going forward. The Capuano, which obviously has a very large pre-K population. Now that is a population that post-COVID, post whatever we get back to, that's a population that will likely rebound. But that is definitely a school that has been hit hard between the pre-K and the kindergarten attrition. So our schools are going to look different. They're going to feel different. Even, I mean, we still have to see in the mix of what happens when kids are coming in, and then there's the building back of the relationships at a time that's remote with families that we don't yet know and getting to know them. And then thinking about, once physical hybrid starts, what's the best way we can support that transition, since it will be a very new school community for those students. So I think, there's the enrollment data is rich in a lot of things, to look at, I think for sure. The real question is sort of a year from now, when we're sort of beyond, or hopefully at a different stage of this, where the questions that we have right now aren't the same questions. I wonder what Somerville looks like, what our Somerville public schools looks like in that way.
Thank you for that comment. Dr. Ackman?
Thank you, Chair Norman. Through you to Ms. Bertoldo, I am wondering if and this is anecdotal, it's not research-based, but I'm wondering, because you've, mentioned neighboring districts and then out of state, other parts of Massachusetts, do we have any information on whether we are losing students because there are families that are finding opportunities for in-person schooling, and because we've been explicit about the remote start? And I'm just curious if anyone has mentioned it or not.
So we have it's such an odd year this year. It's hard to tell.
And if you don't have the information, you don't have the information. I don't want to ask you to speculate where you don't know. I just didn't know if anyone had said anything. It's something I'm curious about.
That I did hear, from emails that I have, that people are going where they can get more of full-time in person in the school, and that you can get a lot from the private, right? So we have a handful of the students going to private, but that's because, and then the younger ones, they need full-time care, so that's the arrangements that they are making.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Ms. Krupchen?
Thank you for that. Through you, Madam Chair, to Ms. Bertoldo. Recognizing that you don't have a crystal ball, just curious if you are concerned about first day of remote learning, a ton of students simply not showing up.
Well, I'm afraid they'll show up in this.
They'll show up physically to school because I see what you're saying. Okay. I was just wondering if there are going to be people who have moved to another country, to another state, who knows where, and haven't let us know, and if that's a concern. Again, recognize you don't have a crystal ball. I'm just curious what their thinking is.
We did have the request of families from out of the country, if they could continue remote. But then the kids are enrolled, and wherever they are, right? So we have a family in Germany, a couple of families in Brazil, another family in Philippines, but then the time, the time zone, it's totally different as well.
All right.
So they not, it makes it impossible. So have we had the request? Yes, we've had the request. Do I think there'll be people from somewhere else accessing the remote? Yes. I think, yeah, there would be families that might not tell us, but they, they'll take advantage of the remote.
Superintendent, did you want to jump in?
Yeah, so I think in general, the schools have been doing really good work staying in touch with the families all summer.
Mhm.
And now with staff, having, coming back and developing class lists and now reaching out, I'm sure we'll find another level. There's a couple particular schools I have a little bit of that concern with. East Somerville is one of them. That there could be pockets of kids that traditionally travel over the summer, so they're not as reachable, and then they just don't materialize. They don't show back up. I think Argenziano, that's a lot of what we're seeing is sort of, and that's the reason the last week or so, week and a half, there's been a big uptick of the withdrawals. Is kids are kind of either traveling and getting settled wherever they are, or they're coming back and making other plans. So, yeah, I mean, I think in general, but within the next week or so, we will pretty much have a very good handle on, from an engagement standpoint, the students that are going to be returning to us. Yeah.
Thank you. Ms. Batone, did you have your hand up earlier?
I did. I don't want to drag this on, but I had, through you, Chair Norman, to the superintendent or Ms. Bertoldo, I had a question about if we know anything about the enrollment in the learning management system offline, or what, and reminding the community what the deadline technically is for that, as well as reminding the community the email that they're going to receive, who it's going to come from, where they update their registration information, just because we're all getting flooded with so much communication in our email, and encouraging the community to go, hey, look for this email and do your re-registration. I literally was looking for mine and I can't even find it. So if I'm having that problem, if we can give everybody a heads up, that would be great. Thank you.
Thank you for that. There is a lot of that. And I think more of those questions are going to, as families are making those decisions. Well, with that, if there's no more questions, Regina, it's always a delight to have you. I hope you are not up super late tonight going through those emails, but if I know you, there's a good chance that's exactly what you're going to be doing after this meeting. And we're grateful for all the work that you do and look forward to hearing as you have more updates for us and our students. So thank you.
Thank you. And my staff too. It's been amazing. Yeah.
Yes. All of the staff. They're all working incredibly hard. And when you see them, please extend our gratitude to them too.
I will. Thank you. Thank you.
Good to see you.
Likewise.
So I think that there have been a couple of questions about the athletics, and there's been obviously a lot of information that has been coming out and changing. So our athletic director, Stan Vieira, is on the line. And so if we could ask him, there he is.
Yeah. Athletics is also part of the Friday afternoon surprise announcements. Welcome, Athletic Director Vieira. It's so good to see you.
Thank you so much.
And good to see you smiling because your situation's changing too. So welcome tonight.
It's very fluid for sure. Yes, thank you. Thank you. Thank you, school committee, for having me tonight. And I also want to thank Superintendent Skipper and Mayor Curtatone, who have been very, very supportive of myself and our department during my first year here at Somerville High School. So can't say enough thank yous. And a special thank you to Mayor Curtatone, who's been a resource, particularly during these times. He's been not just to myself, but to our league, the Greater Boston League. He's helped guide us through all of this and continues to do that. Again, thank you very much. Let me give you as concise of an explanation as possible regarding what's going on with our wonderful athletic program. So essentially, we were, like most of you, in Zoom meetings throughout the spring and summer and going over different guidance on how we would look at athletics from a structural standpoint and how it would play out, and how we could figure it out. The MIAA eventually gave us an answer on what they felt like we could do, the Massachusetts high schools, and said that from their perspective, after many meetings with the sports medicine task force, that we could, if we felt it was possible, we could do low risk and some moderate risk sports for this upcoming fall. They gave us the luxury of making that decision, and if we felt as a school, as a district, we couldn't do that, we could push our sports to what they're terming the floating or the fall 2 season. So you could push your fall sports to what they've designated on the calendar as end of February through summer of April, which would allow us. Now that brings other challenges for us to do that. Please go ahead.
Just to be clear, is again, I feel like every district is on their own for determining what a healthy building is, all of these guidance. So is what the MIAA said that districts can decide individually, but if you are competing in a league, did the league have to decide to collectively, or is it an individual school district's decision?
Sure, I would. It's really a league decision. Nobody's going to make an individual decision. It wouldn't make any sense for them from a scheduling standpoint. So leagues have come together. But that I'm glad you brought that up, because that adds another wrinkle, in particular with the Greater Boston League. So the league obviously is very eager to do something to put in place some kind of physical activity for our kids. You know, for their physical well-being, for their mental well-being. The issue we have, and this is what I've been working with Mayor Curtatone on, is the issue we have currently is that 2 out of the 5 schools in the Greater Boston League are designated red communities, which means currently constituted they cannot do anything, especially sports. So we're trying to get some additional guidance and some clarification on what that actually means and what we can and cannot do. So we continue to have meetings. We have a meeting tomorrow and throughout the week to hopefully get some clarification. That said, I'm sorry, does somebody have a question? I apologize. That said, we have a couple of different models in place. So one of the things that we've looked at is, as a league, if we were all able to do athletics, we've talked about doing a hybrid model, which would allow us to do cross country, golf, and soccer, boys and girls. Without question, we would push football and volleyball, because volleyball being an indoor sport and football being a sport that you just couldn't manage from a safety standpoint, pushing them to the fall 2 season and having the other sports in place. If we can determine that the 2 communities that are in the red could actually play sports. If we determine that that's not possible, it's not feasible, and we need to push everything to the fall 2 season, we would put in a conditioning/drill schedule for our kids to get out. That the luxury we have in Somerville is that we have multiple facilities. The one that really stands out to us is Dilboy Stadium. Dilboy Stadium allows us to do things in a very safe way, adhering to all guidelines of the CDC and the EEA, and making sure our kids are staying safe. We can stagger workouts. We can come in one entrance, leave the other exit. So we can do it in a very safe manner, but yet have an ability to have our kids and our coaches work in cohorts and do it very safely. So again, we're looking at a couple of different models. I wish I had a concrete answer for you as far as what we are definitely doing. My hope is that by the end of the week, with the help of Superintendent Skipper and Joe Curtatone and all of our Greater Boston League officials, that we'll have some kind of answer. But again, the goal is to have something in place by the end of the week that offers our kids some physical activity.
Madam Chairperson, can I add to that?
Absolutely.
So I want to thank Stan Vieira, because I've had the opportunity to work closely with him and all the other ADs on this and a variety of issues, especially league issues. I have, for context, I've had a long-standing relationship with the GBL, not only as a player when I was at Sun High, but as a coach for years for various schools, including Somerville High, and as an advocate for kids, especially when it came to taking on the MIA, of which I am not a fan of at all. And I'll make that clear. I hold nothing back. They are incompetent. And when we talk about no guidance from the state, the MIA is no better. And let me just say, because the important point is we need to find a way for kids to engage in safe activity to support their learning and their overall social and emotional well-being. And being outside, physically doing things safely is an easy way to do this. Now, let me, Stan Vieira mentioned something that's important, and it goes back to what I said about this very elementary colored map based on one indicator on whether or not you should be in school fully, remotely, or hybrid. The state and the MIA are attempting to use that in athletics too. So if your city is red, and you can teeter-totter back and forth very easily over a short period of time, your kids will not be allowed to participate in interscholastic sports. So who will this be most detrimental against? It's communities of color, Black and brown people, vulnerable communities. But yet, at the same time, all the kids in those very communities can participate in youth sports, even at 18 years of age and under a club scenario. And really, it's the most affluent communities who can do that. But you're saying also, and I had this conversation with Mayor Lynn, his kids can't play interscholastic sports, but by all means, the kids from Swampscott and Marblehead come into Lynn and use their golf course. So this is really offensive. And I think we could all agree, and Somerville, I think we have credibility on this. We've been most conservative when it comes to reopening any parts of our lives or economy or any type of activity. Up or down? And so would agree that, if any type of recreational or interscholastic sports activity is a high risk or a cause for transmission or a spike in cases, that should not be allowed, or certainly be curtailed. But in this case here, some of the very sports they're talking about are allowed today under the youth sports guidance rules the Commonwealth has aligned. And many athletes, in particular affluent communities, are participating in club sports, are going over the line to New Hampshire and other New England states and participating in those very sports, including football, including youth football. So I'm working with other mayors across the region. We made ourselves very clear, and I know the superintendent has as well, we made ourselves very clear to Governor Baker's administration, particularly Lieutenant Governor Polito, that, look, we're not going to stand for this. And this cannot be, this is absolutely not only inequitable, but discriminatory on its face. It really is not based in logic. The other point I think the school committee and the public should be made aware of is this other proposition. I know the superintendent knows this, that if you choose to go virtual or fully remote as a community or as a parent, you think it's best for your family, perhaps someone has an underlying health condition or a diminished immune system, or you just don't feel safe sending your child to school, they're not going to be allowed to play interscholastic sports, which again defies logic. So I just want to put that context out there because these are some of the challenges we're going to have, but also trying to be creative amongst the communities in the GBL and other regional communities like the Lynns, like the Salems, to engage our kids to have our kids engage in physical, recreational activities of all types to help them cope with the emotional duress and stress because of the isolation and uncertainty of the situation. So I'm sorry to go on, but I thought I should add that.
I can't leave that alone either. It is our Somerville, both, we were in the GBL, we were in another league, we're back in the GBL. I think our kids know firsthand, both whether their experiences in some of the other towns or whether it's being able to play or not being able to play, are very aware of the inequities between towns. And that is not lost on kids. And they're very clear about it. I will say a huge thank you to everyone who's trying to figure out some some way for our kids to have activity, especially in the middle grades, in the high school, who are not, these aren't kids who are, there's not programming for them otherwise. It is an opportunity for them to be out of their houses, turn the fortnight off, get some exercise. And so I applaud any and every effort to get them to move around. Exercise, we know, is such an important part of both physical and mental health. So Stan, thank you for plugging along. Thank you for keeping your sense of good cheer and really advocating for our kids. And however this comes out, however you're able to do that, it is very much appreciated.
Thank you again for inviting me tonight. It was an honor.
Good to see you. Superintendent, who's next on your the parade of stars?
I think we have the caboose is Mr. Mazza.
Assistant Superintendent Mazza, how are you?
I am well. How is everybody? Thank you, Superintendent Skipper. Through you, Madam Chair. So I just want to give you some updates on our remote learning training and academic support. But again, we view everything with our lens of equity, and equity is not lowering expectations of what a student can accomplish in an effort to understand the challenges he faces. Equity is ensuring that all students, especially our students with disabilities, English language learners, and our Black and Brown students, get the support they need to succeed. So as you know, everything we do is through our lens of equity. Around professional development for our educators, you know, as part of the 12-day planning, as you know, PD and training, the training window at the beginning of the school year, we will have professional development around the following areas: equity, of course, remote learning best practices for engagement, with a focus on project-based learning, small group instruction, one-to-one instruction, and community building. We'll also have technical and instructional support using online platforms such as Zoom, Google Classroom, Google Meet, ClassDojo, and Seesaw. Social emotional practices for how to recognize and respond to student trauma and transition issues. Teacher assessments and feedback to students and families, including our formative pre-assessments, our common assessments, and grading and standards feedback. And probably most importantly, our family outreach structure, our strategy, and our plan. So around academic supports and resources for educators as we begin to plan for the reopening, you know, starting this summer, our K-5 ELA and K-8 math coaches develop Google slide decks and instructional resources that educators can use when they're providing synchronous instruction to their students. And K-8 educators in subject areas other than ELA and math also develop Google slide decks and other resources that they can use when providing synchronous instruction to their students. We reworked our pacing guides to include standards not covered in the spring of 2020 to allow for sufficient community building, technology instruction time in the fall, and to account for the updated 170-day DESE guidance. We also partnered with other organizations to work with groups of educators to create effective supports and adaptations. Some examples are working with our Leslie University partners through the Biogen grant to adapt our grades 6 to 8 math and science curriculum, working with our Boston University Wheelock College of Education partners to adapt our newly developed K-5 science unit to be delivered in a remote setting. The development of an orientation on-ramp for pre-K to 8 with home learning kits and communication from teachers about curriculum, and also weekly pre-K curriculum grids and monthly topical units to support play, early literacy, and mathematical thinking. Before I go on, I just want to mention I left our pre-K peeps out of this morning, not on purpose, but I wanted to make sure that I acknowledged, and I do apologize for doing that, but you are an integral part of our district. Our ed tech team, they have office hours, which is a recurring virtual space for any staff to ask questions and check in with colleagues. The ed tech team has more than 40 educators with district representation across nearly all schools. The ed tech team is also developing a library of how-to guides, videos, and other resources for staff, students, and families translated into multiple languages and that will be a central focus as we move forward. Some academic points as we get into our reopening. We need to maximize the amount of quality time that teachers and students get to interact with each other. We need to implement more small group and individual learning experiences that better engage students, increase personalized learning, and target the needs of individual students by differentiating instruction to embrace different needs and learning styles. We also need to incorporate frequent opportunities for students to receive various forms of feedback, whether that'll be verbal, written, peer feedback, to help guide their learning and development. And the asynchronous work that students will get should be designed in a way that students of different abilities and skills can access independently and require minimal at-home adult support, and may require us to supply students with the materials for them to complete this work. Around scheduling, again, this is recommended as an effective practice, but not required. A weekly parent informational session. Schedule a 20 to 30-minute block to review weekly plans and expectations with parents, with interpreters. And again, that's not required, but we know that giving parents and families a schedule, discussing what they're going to be doing for the week, their children, will be very effective and allow parents to assist when they need to. Teachers providing increased synchronous instruction. This includes whole class, small group, and one-to-one. Our special education and SEI services, they must be provided per IEP and ELL guidelines. And we need to create a blend of whole class and small group instruction to ensure students have full schedules of synchronous and asynchronous learning. Another important piece is around relationship building. We know that relationships are crucial, especially in a remote setting. We learned during the spring closure how crucial strong teacher-student family relationships are in order to promote student well-being and effective learning. Providing time early in the year to allow for educators to reach out, be it in virtual or in person, safe outdoor spaces, to meet directly with families, to begin building relationships and connections that go beyond the screen. And creating and sharing resources to help educators build strong classroom communities and explicitly teach and embed social emotional learning skills in the first few weeks of school. Creating space and schedules to allow for weekly classroom community meetings. Increasing outreach and support to families who may not have engaged or participated as much as desired during the spring closure, as well as continuing to identify and remove barriers that prevent families and students from fully engaging. And given that many students, families, and staff have experienced hardships during the pandemic and closure, a variety of social, emotional, and mental health supports are needed daily. So these are a lot of the supports that educators and families have in place. We continue to strengthen, our mission for remote learning. I know there was a lot of excitement and engagement today around starting to build schedules for students and teachers. There was really good vibes today, a lot of excitement. There was some anxiety. If you think about it, we've been off for a little bit, and to get back into, educator mode, sometimes it's hard, but given the circumstances we are in, I would say that, staff did a fantastic job today. And honestly, I can't be more proud. Teachers want to be with their kids. Families want their children to be with their teachers. And we're figuring out ways to make that happen more so than we did in the spring.
Thank you for that. Are there any questions for Assistant Superintendent Mazza about, that was a lot of information and a lot of planning and a lot of what families can expect, and educators have the next, 11 work days to sort out. Mr. Green, is that hand up?
Just so you know, Matt had said comment in the chat.
Oh, Matt, would you like to?
Previous subject. I have
Oh,
nothing.
I'm so sorry.
No worries.
Do you want to jump in now or hold it? What would make?
Nope, not important.
Okay. Thank you for keeping an eye, and I would ask any of my colleagues if I'm looking more at the screen now. So if you notice something in the chat, if someone isn't on screen, please by all means, speak up. Any of those interruptions will always be welcome. Mr. Green?
Thank you, Madam Chair. As you said, this was a lot of information. It's a lot of information parents have told us they want. But we've also heard from parents repeatedly, and as a parent, I tell I feel it, the sense of being flooded by emails and information. So my question is, do we have a thought or a plan for ways in which this kind of information can be made available to parents in a digestible way? Given that
We do.
This is all moving target.
Sure, through you, Madam Chair. We do. We're creating a parent learning guide that will have a lot of instructional videos, that will have timeframes where we are offering training on online platforms in multiple languages. There'll be paper copies of things that we will distribute at the food distribution sites. So we're creating a really, I want to say, intense plan for families, so we can involve them as much as possible in the planning and get them resources that they need. You know, like I was saying during the presentation, that idea of a weekly parent meeting to set the stage for the week, I think, is a very important piece. It's not required by any means, but it goes a long way in building community. It prepares parents for what their children will be doing for the week. And then they can also troubleshoot with teachers during that time. And I think it's a really effective use of time, for sure.
Ms. Krepchen?
Thank you. I'm not sure if this is the appropriate time to ask this, but I'll bring it up because I was thinking about professional development and what all the teachers are doing for the next 2 weeks. And I've been thinking about cyberbullying and wondering if that's a topic that has come up amongst teachers, or if it's something we should be bringing up with them, or just what your thoughts are on how that the topic may change now that we're fully remote for at least some period of time.
Superintendent?
Madam Chair, so this actually is part of the SEL curriculum. So what generally happens is, whether we're in person or remote, Liz Doncaster and the SSD team will do PD as part of one of the days to talk about this. They will also talk about 504 accommodations. They'll talk about 51A filing in a remote setting. So really a lot of the practices that would typically happen in an in-person now gets transferred to remote, we will address. I will say, interestingly enough, we saw less and we were made aware less of cyberbullying when we were remote than when we were in person. And, you know, that could be maybe not reporting it, but it could also be that, you know, kids are using the technology for school. So they're using it more purposefully than when they're using their phones and social media, which is the bulk of where we see cyberbullying. So it is just kind of interesting, but I would say, and I think Liz would assert this, that every week we had 2 to 3 cyberbullying kinds of cases that we would be sorting out at a school-based level with the principal. And during the remote learning period, there were a few, but nothing of that magnitude. So, you know, again, I think, you know, part of it is we spend a lot of time educating the kids, as we continue to do, about what's appropriate and not appropriate. And, you know, I think right now, going into the new remote season, there's some disturbing things on TikTok that need to be called out. There's some, you know, disturbing social media challenges that we're going to want parents to be aware of and to watch for. So these will be things that our ed tech team will put forward to make parents aware, so that, you know, they can talk with students and make sure that they're not involving themselves in it.
Mr. Green?
Thank you. To build off Ms. Krepsen's question and comment, are there plans to address possible needs to change, update, better inform families, parents, staff about student picture policies, given the ease and the likelihood of taking, you know, screenshots of the Zoom meetings, et cetera?
Yeah, so we had actually worked with our law firm at the end of last year during the remote closure to put forward sort of MOU for parents, and very similarly that'll hold true this year. about what to speak with students about, to remind them not to do what's not appropriate to do, what's illegal to do, what you cannot do. And then that'll get, as part of the instructional videos, reinforced, as Mr. Mazza said, in the parent education piece. Yeah, I mean, I think in general, the internet and social media is ever changing. And I think it's probably one of the hardest things for parents to keep up with. Most always, kids are going to be smarter than you are as a parent. And so, the more that we adults can stick together and make each other wiser, the better. So that's what we really are attempting to do with it. But it is just true. The kids learn. They spend so much time on it. It is second nature to them that they just see a lot and they hear a lot, often well before we do. So, as always, we say to parents, if you hear or see something that makes you uncomfortable, that you're not sure it should be happening, you can always reach out to the teacher, to the counselor, to the school assistant principal or principal, and we'll help with that.
Thank you for that. Are there any other questions for Mr. Mazza? Okay. I would also like to acknowledge that City Councilor Jesse Klingon from Ward 4, who is also a parent, is with us tonight. And I think he's been at other meetings too. So whenever there's cross-pollinations between the two bodies, it's a helpful thing. So thank you for joining us. Superintendent Skipper, you want to continue with your report?
Here's my report. I'd just like to, thank all of the educators in SPS. We had our kickoff this morning. I think it went really well. I think, we wanted to communicate a thankfulness for everyone's hard work and flexibility and commitment, knowing that, what we all went through last spring was not in any way, shape, or form the expectation that we hold ourselves to. And knowing that we're going to start this year, well prepared, ready to go, excited, and that our students and our families are as well. We also talked a lot about our equity work and that it really needs to be, an urgent matter, given everything that's going on in our community and in the broader nation. Our students and families of color have experienced a lot of trauma this summer, well different than COVID. And a lot of the racial injustice pieces, there needs to be a space within Somerville Public Schools for our students of color, our families of color, and our staff of color to feel like they can bring that, and that we will listen and we will understand and we will support. And Dr. Jessica Boston Davis, gave a wonderful outline of the work that she and many of the staff intend to do. And I think people feel really committed and ready to go with it. So that's just wanted to share that with school committee. And I'll forward my talk. Apparently we have a YouTube channel now, just so you know. And so part of how we ended up posting from Zoom was through the YouTube channel. So a little unnerving because usually I like to see the audience in front of me, but apparently it was successful and it worked. And a big shout out to Karen Woods and John Breslin for all of their tech support. But I will forward a copy of what I shared with staff this morning to school committee. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Green?
To Superintendent, if there's a YouTube channel, couldn't you send us a link to the video of your talk?
Absolutely. I believe I can do that. I may have to confer with my technical experts, but I believe I can do that. So I will do that, actually.
You can also go to YouTube and search on Mary Skipper, and the Mary Skipper channel will come right up.
A childhood dream came true.
Good times. Okay, so also under the district report is the school committee fall meeting schedule. I think because we still have the vaccine policy for the first reading. If it's all right with you, Superintendent, I didn't think we were going to go through it meeting by meeting, but what I would ask is every chair of a subcommittee to look at the schedule. This is a draft. If there are changes to be made, please consult with all of the members of your subcommittee and your central office counterpart, and make sure that you convey that to Ms. Santiago, because we would like to get a schedule out as soon as possible. But so please look through all of those dates. Also, if when you're looking through them, if there are any holidays or other days that we need to avoid, whether for whatever reason, if you notice that, please, 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 the sooner we know that, the easier it is to make adjustments at the start of the year as opposed to later in the year. I would also ask the subcommittee chairs, and I know this is a very unusual year, if you had some sense of your agendas through the fall, through the rest of this year, even if it's going to be changing. And if you don't, that is completely okay too, because that's just where we're at these days. Superintendent, anything on the personnel report, or do you want to do that next time?
No, we'll do it next time. I actually pulled it off. I noticed something that needed to be corrected, so I'll have them update.
You did pull it off, and I saw it in the packet. Okay, thank you so much for. Oh no, it's on the. Okay, super. We are now moving on to item number 5, report of subcommittees. School committee meeting for rules management of August 14th. Dr. Ackman.
So I don't have that written up. I can try and go from memory. In short, we passed the emergency leave policy, and we passed the vaccine policy through that JLCB that we will discuss. In attendance was Dr. Phillips and Ms. Barish and Chair Norman. Regina Bertoldo spent time answering all our questions, giving us thoughts. The new superintendent intern, Mary, tell me his name again.
Intaro.
Yes, he was there, offered us wonderful suggestions, as did Dr. Curley, and I think that was it. I'm trying to think. It was a Friday. August 14th, like you said, we called to order, I think right at noon, finished right before 1. And that's my report.
Is there a motion to accept the report?
So moved.
Who was that? Dr. Phillips, and is there a motion to second that? I mean, is there a second to the motion? Oh, it's been a long day. Thank you, Ms. Barish. So there is a motion by Dr. Phillips, seconded by Ms. Barish to accept the Chair Ackman's report. Can we get a roll call vote, please?
Certainly. Dr. Phillips?
Yes.
Ms. Krupshin?
Yes.
President McLaughlin?
Yes.
Mr. Green?
Yeah.
Mayor Curtatone?
Yes.
Ms. Barish?
Yes.
Mr. Tone?
Yes.
Dr. Ackman?
Yes.
And Ms. Norman?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. And I'd like to thank Dr. Ackman and all the members of the Rules Committee. That was a quickly scheduled meeting because we needed to get the emergency leave policy through. So we appreciate the efficiency of your work, and we did vote on the whole school committee voted and approved the emergency leave policy at our last meeting. So this now brings us on to new business. Item A, Somerville Public Schools Policy Manual. The following policies being presented this evening for the first reading as amended. JLCB, the immunization policy. I know it's a length policy, but I also think of something of this importance. It should be read. Also, since the time that the Rules Committee met, the state has also issued guidance, or it's not guidance.
Baker's executive order, right?
Thank
Yep.
you.
Indeed.
So executive order about vaccines. So I am glad that we got that before we had to consider it in the full school committee. If there is someone who is willing to do a first reading, that would be greatly appreciated.
I'm happy to.
Thank you, Dr. Ackman.
Okay. JLCB, immunizations. Influenza, flu, and COVID-19 are both contagious respiratory illnesses that are caused by different viruses. COVID-19 is caused by infection with the coronavirus, SARS-CoV-2, and flu is caused by infection with influenza viruses. Because some of the symptoms of flu and COVID-19 are similar, it can be hard to tell the difference between them based on symptoms alone, and testing may be needed to help confirm a diagnosis. Preventing transmission of the flu is especially important in schools and during the global COVID-19 pandemic. Annual flu vaccines protect Somerville Public Schools students and staff against the most common flu viruses and allow the city and district to focus resources on prevention and surveillance of COVID-19. Immunization requirement. No student as defined in 105 CMR 220.400 shall attend Somerville Public School preschool programs for in-person learning without certificate of immunization, documenting that the child has been successfully immunized in accordance with the current Department of Public Health recommended schedules against influenza, diphtheria, tetanus, pertussis, polio, measles, mumps, rubella, Haemophilus influenza type B, hepatitis B, varicella, and other communicable diseases as specified from the time to time by the department in accordance with the recommendation of the Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices of the Centers for Disease Control or any successor committee serving in a comparable fashion. No student as defined in 105 CMR 220-400 shall attend kindergarten through 12th grade for in-person learning without a certificate of immunization or a copy of a school immunization record. The student has received immunization according with the current Department of Public Health recommended schedules against the same list of viruses. And in accordance with the recommendations of the Advisory Committee on Immunization Practice for the Centers for Disease Control or any successor committees serving in a comparable function. Documentation, the certificate of immunization means either a form or letter signed and dated by a physician, nurse practitioner, physician's assistant, or designee. Will list the type and names of vaccines administered to the student, or data report from the Massachusetts Immunization Information System, which specifies the month and year of administration and the type of vaccines administered to the student. Access. The City of Somerville Public Schools will offer free of charge annual influenza vaccines to all district personnel, full-time, part-time, and contracted employees, parents, caregivers, and students in order to support this policy. An exemption to the vaccine policy may be requested for certain medical reasons, including documentation of severe allergy to the vaccine or components as defined by the most current recommendations of the CDC's Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices, or history of Guillain-Barré syndrome within 6 weeks of receiving an influenza vaccine. That is it.
Thank you so much for that, Ms. For that very lengthy reading. Ms. Barish?
Thank you, Chair Norman. I don't know if anyone here can answer this question. It may be something for Doug Kress. I'm wondering if we're requiring the flu vaccine before anyone can participate in in-person learning. Do we have access to adequate supplies that this policy isn't going to prevent us from reopening the phased-in hybrid model when we otherwise would be able to? I just don't know how much, I don't know how much flu vaccine is available now or next week or in early November.
So Madam Chairwoman, I'd like to respond to that.
Please.
Yeah, we do have adequate supply. All indications are that we will. I asked this very same question several years ago. We had a shortage. I mean, at the end of the day, you want to be in a position to, your supplies dwindle, not dwindle, but you know, you're using your supply because you have large distribution and people taking the vaccine. I think we're over 80%. We want to push that even higher, over 90% as a community, but certainly within the school. So all indications are, you know, when I've heard, when this was also from in a recent call I had with the Massachusetts Municipal Managers Association. I was on a panel the other day, and Dr. Paul Bittiger, who was an expert who's advised the city of Somerville. He was part of the original cohort we've engaged with. He's the head of infectious disease out of Mass General, also says there's adequate supply. So we feel confident on that at this moment.
Thank you so much. Ms. Barish?
Sorry, I just want to make my concern clear, because it's not so much is there adequate supply. I mean, yes, absolutely, is there adequate supply, but if all other indicators, metrics, etc., for example, could allow us to open schools on October 15th, but we couldn't get everyone vaccinated by October 15th, because that's pretty early in the vaccination season. I'm just wondering if we're setting us, is there a way to put a date in this? Like, everyone must have their immunization by, November 1st or something like that in order to participate in in-person learning. I don't know if that makes sense.
It does, and a similar question was asked, and I think that has to be part of our overall integrated plan between what we're doing with the buildings, test and surveillance, as I alluded to earlier, sort of what are all the health protocols and mandates. And I'd submit, and the flu vaccine is one of them. And I won't go beyond that in terms of who should be vaccinated beyond students, but that is something we're finalizing with the health division as well.
I think this is Ms. Barish.
I'm sorry, I just want to make sure I understand the implications of this. So if I'm understanding correctly, then this is something that the city and district needs to think about almost front loading, like making sure that kids are getting vaccinated well before we're thinking about returning to in-person learning, so that we're already in a good position to do that.
Yeah, I don't disagree. Again, we're engaged. Yeah, I don't disagree, and we're engaged with not only Doug Crest and his team, but other health experts on how to approach it on the front end.
Dr. Mann, this is one of those situations again where the school committee is responsible for setting the policy, and that the implementation will be largely informed and directed by the health department in conjunction with the schools too. So, Dr. Ackman, did you have a question or a comment?
I intend to say this as respectfully as possible of my colleague, but I appreciate the concern, but it's also an entirely hypothetical concern. And so I appreciate pushing on it, but my understanding from what the mayor has said is that, we'll do the best we can, but as the district juggles many, many things, as does the Department of Health, like, we have to trust in the people we've employed to do this work, that they're going to do the best they can.
I think we're all assuming best intentions and just trying to clarify. I would ask Ms. Santiago if at our next meeting, when we do the second reading of this, if it's possible to get the governor's executive order added to the packet, so that we all have the language, but also that it would be in the handouts for the public to be able to see. Which, if you're a member of the public and joining us at any of our school committee members meetings, if you click on the handouts, there's always the agenda, and any other supporting documents are there. So thank you. So any more questions or comments about the immunization policy? All right, thank you for that first reading. The next is a report out of school committee office hours. Is there anyone who would like to jump in right now?
I am happy to do it. Just give me a second to find.
Okay. And you can do it off the top of your head as well. This is not meant to be a pop quiz, but a sharing of information. Dr. Phillips, did you have your hand up? Did you want to jump in?
I can do it while you're looking if you want, Ms. Cription, for the one
that
that.
Super. Thank you.
So Eleanor and I did office hours on August 13th, 21 people came. Most of the issues, well, I'll just go through. Discussion centered around a number of themes. Families want to know who their students' cohorts and teachers are. They want that to begin preparing students for the coming year, as well as to form support pods and to help other families in their cohorts find support. Families are concerned about what the schedule will look like in the fall. They had some key concerns that we included in our report. Families are frustrated with the labor negotiation process and the resulting lack of clarity. Families do not have a clear understanding of the distinction between fully remote LMS, hybrid with a remote start, and the option for continued after phase-in synchronous remote learning within the hybrid model. Families had a number of additional questions. Families want to know what technology will look like in the fall, particularly platforms, and how long students will be expected to sit in front of the computer. Families are deeply concerned about students, their own and others, who are being left behind. Families want to use their skills and resources to support others, but express frustration that the district's not accepting their support or giving them tools to connect with families in need. Several expressed a desire for the district or city to create a mechanism to fully leverage community members' skills, expertise, time when offered. There were a number of questions that needed follow-up, including what's happening, what's planned for the UNIDOS program, particularly students in the older grades. At ESCS, the PTA is fundraising for $4,000 worth of technology to enable more timely linguistically appropriate communications with families for whom English is not their home language. There appears to be district support for this, but the district's timeline doesn't match the immediate need. Should families be fundraising for this? Can the district fast track its purchase of the technology? Is the district looking for a way to provide a safe, supervised place for students to engage in remote learning for economically disadvantaged families or families who don't have childcare support? There are a number of suggestions from participants, including shorter, more concise, multilingual, multimodal communication from the district to support interfamily connections and cohorting, podding by providing contact information to all families or the other families in their cohorts as soon as possible. And to continue to think beyond the school walls to encourage district-wide teaching teams and repairing schools with different demographics and different challenges.
Thank you for that comprehensive list. Just as a quick reminder for the public, this was a round of office hours that we did between the Monday when the reopening plan was presented and then the next full school committee meeting that next Monday where we had to vote. And so we put together a set of office hours over that week and that weekend. And that's what it was very focused on that, the reopening plan. Dr. Ackman, or Ms. Krupchen, pardon me.
No problem. I am ready. I found my notes. So I hosted on Sunday, August 16th. It was me, Andre Green, Laura Patone. We had 12 parents attend and one who was a parent and a school-based liaison. We had a number of questions about needing to communicate the different options in an easier to understand way. There was a lot of confusion about phased hybrid, full remote LMS, and synchronous versus asynchronous. There was concern that some families will choose the wrong option because they're confused. How much will kids doing the LMS interact with SPS teachers? Health and safety, when will those detailed guidelines be released? Will they be public? What happens if it's determined that some buildings are safe but others aren't? A parent wondered if it's possible to issue a preliminary building report, even if the full report isn't ready yet, because there are a lot of rumors circulating among parents on social media. When will we have the detailed plan for what the school day will look like? Parents are concerned about screen fatigue, especially for our youngest learners. Parents are looking forward to complementary programming outdoor spaces. When will the rec sign up be released? Parents are worried that it will be first come, first serve, which would be a terrible idea. Where do we stand with open negotiations? The last conversation with the SDA, when we talked about it, one of the concerns was making sure there is translation. When When will we have more information on the high school schedule? It's still being negotiated, but high school schedules are complicated in the best of times. So this is the kind of complicated planning that high school administrators are trained to do. A parent asked school committee member for their big picture ideas about changes that could come out of the pandemic. We discussed that remote learning works well for some things in some contexts, and perhaps could be used differently in the post-pandemic world. Can school committee meetings continue to be remote going forward? It's really a really convenient way for community involvement. And we discussed that that's actually up to the state, but we'd also like to explore that. How can parents help? We discussed volunteer coordinator for the SPS, city volunteer page, and ways to help at individual schools like the school improvement councils. Can the signups for various programs be more streamlined? Can there be one login for SPS, the rec department, community schools, etc.? Should schools be doing more to support pods, small working groups at each school? Feels like parents and teachers have really been at odds lately. What can we do to repair these relationships? Can school committee encourage the city to provide municipal free Wi-Fi? And then we had a discussion about the fact that one of the reasons remote learning worked as well as it did in the spring is that teachers already had deep relationships with their students. There was concern that kids won't listen to a teacher on a computer screen that they don't know yet. We discussed the idea of last year's teachers introducing the next grade's teachers, whether that happens outside in some fashion, live on Zoom, or via a pre-recorded video. All the parents in the office hours liked the idea of some outdoor time to get to know teachers at the beginning of the year. And that is my report.
Thank you for that comprehensive list. Anyone else? And if we, yes, Laura.
Thank you, Chair Norman. I had a question for you. We had the CPAC town hall, which is not exactly an office hour. I think it's some issues and questions were brought up there that I'd like to be shared with this full school committee, but I also know I don't think Christine's on the call right now, Trevisoni, our Director of Special Education, so I wouldn't want to discuss it without her. So I'm just going to put that out maybe for a future agenda item.
She was on the whole night. I actually released her because I didn't think that anybody was bringing anything up with special ed. She just left.
No, I looked for her. I knew she was on earlier, so I want to bring it up, but I don't want to have it without her. So maybe in the next week.
We could do if there is more. I think the reporting out to me is more about sort of general ideas and trends. And if there was, I think that I'm losing my train of thought. It has been a very long day, very full day, but a very long day. I think the point of reporting on office hours is not necessarily to have the district respond to each item, but to share sort of themes. And I would be comfortable whether you want to summarize it or if you would like me to. I think
I'm happy to do it. Like I said, I just wanted to be sensitive. Like, I agree with you. I don't think that we need to answer all the questions, and I just wanted to give the courtesy to ask Mary about, should I do it, or ask you. If you want me to do it, I'll do it.
Superintendent Skipper, do you have an opinion? Because I
think it would be helpful to have Director Trevisoni on the call. So
Okay.
I can plan to do that for the next time.
Okay, and out of respect for her time, because she has been very generous with, not only does she have an enormous amount of responsibility with more guidances coming up from the state and changing more quickly, she also has been attending a significant number of meetings at night, and I mean late night, I mean 10 o'clock night. So maybe we can put that on the agenda for next time, and then we can take it out, items out of order, so that she would not, we can be accommodating. Thank you for bringing that up, Ms. Patone. That's super helpful. Anyone else? So I appreciate everyone's efforts to be as accessible to the community, whether it's through town halls, and the interpretation services have been enormously helpful, holding office hours, emails, calls, however it is, because this is both the time to be listening to our community very hard, but also to be getting out information as we know it and as we anticipate it. So thank you to everybody. The next item of business is donations, and I would happily entertain an motion. Ms. Barish.
I move to accept a donation of 2,400 backpacks with student supplies from Cradles to Crayons located in Newton, Mass. Value to be determined, to the Somerville Public Schools.
Second.
There is a motion by Ms. Barish, seconded by Ms. Krepchin. Can I get a roll call vote, please? Or is there any discussion? Other than to say thank you. This is a program that we get just thousands of backpacks every year, and I appreciate that they have continued to do that. Mr. Green?
So I will be elaborating on this in items from board members, but what is the plan for distributing the backpacks this year?
Through you, Madam Chair. So this year was a little different. Usually the backpacks come fully stuffed with all of the supplies, but because of COVID, that didn't happen. So the backpacks are actually being delivered this week to the various schools by the amounts. And then we're breaking the supplies up ourselves to then also bring to the schools. And that will be part of several things that will go home as sort of a care package to students to be able to use at home. So there'll be reading books, there will be workbooks, there will be some additional supply material, art supplies, all of those kinds of things that the students will be using at home during the remote.
Thank you for that. Seeing no further comments, can I get a roll call vote on the exception of donations, please?
Certainly, Dr. Phillips?
Yes.
Ms. Krepchin?
Yes.
President McLaughlin?
Yes.
Mr. Green?
Yes.
Mayor Curtatone? Ms. Barish?
Yes.
Ms. Patone?
Yes.
Dr. Ackman?
Yes.
And Ms. Norman?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Fantastic. Item number 7, items from board members. Do any members? Mr. Green and then Dr. Ackman.
Sure, I have 2 quick ones, and they're somewhat related. One, it was asked of me by a constituent if we had plans for our desks this year. In particular, would it be possible perhaps for surplus furniture or maybe even temporary surplus furniture to be available to families for whom space to have their children do work is an option, is an issue, right? And if we could make desks available to needy families, that would actually help some students with their remote needs. That's the first thing. The second thing is the Census Department has asked if perhaps as part of those care packages to students, we could include some census information.
Thank you for those 2 novel ideas. Superintendent, if you'd like to respond now, you're welcome to, and if you need time to consider.
Yeah, no, the desks are really interesting. It's an interesting idea. I need to just think about that a little bit as to where, because obviously we're not using all of the desks right now, but we will have a need for the desks, so it would be more of a loan. And the question is how to sort of get it to the house and get it back. But let me do some thinking on that.
Fantastic. Dr. Ackman?
So I wanted to follow up on the request from CPAC, and I don't know if this goes to you, Madam Chair, or through you as the chair to the superintendent, if it's something we have to vote on. I personally, I know there's CPAC, there's LPAC. Don't we have one more parent advocacy group? No? Okay, just the
No.
two? What?
CPAC and LPAC.
Okay, yeah. So I don't know if we need to vote on it, but I want to be clear that I think it is worth whatever money we spend to fund their Zoom accounts, since they are run by volunteers and are support vulnerable parts of our community. And so I'm wondering if we need to vote on it, or if there's anything we do need to do in order to get that to happen.
Superintendent Skipper, I would also suggest that this may be finance and facilities, because it has a financial implication. That might be the place to have this discussion about the specifics of it. Superintendent Skipper?
Yeah, I mean, I was just gonna say, I think it's a legal question. And I think it is also like a legitimate technology question. So I need to talk with John Breslin about it. So I can bring more information back to the next meeting on it, what we find.
I really appreciate it.
You're
That
welcome.
would be great. Superintendent Skipper, when you were talking with John Breslin, I think part of the concern for CPAC is also the ability to do breakout and translation rooms. And I know that Zoom's able to do that if there are other things. I think that was, I can't remember if Ms. Lippin mentioned that, but that was one of the concerns. So
The thing I don't know is whether or not we can actually, we have a license for Zoom that's in the K-12 structure. And I don't know that we can actually get them another license. It may be that we can set them up under us to do it. I need to ask that question. But I don't think we can purchase them a license. I think it would be if we can extend our K-12, but that's a legal question. I don't know if we can do that to nonprofits. So I'll find out.
okay. Thank you so much for that. Are there any other items from board members tonight? Are there any condolences tonight? Well, as happy as I am to see all of you, I am also happy to announce that this meeting is now adjourned. Have a good night.